Now it's Wednesday, and we do need to consider that written feedback does need to be used carefully. It is the most common type of feedback, or the one that we think of the most often for teachers. One problem with written individual comments is that they end up being very generic. You end up with comments like add more detail here or explain this, but without being able to give the detail on how to do those things. Or you end up being really specific and fixing the entire piece of work for the pupil. Written marking takes up huge amounts of teachers' time. If the average teacher marks for just over 5 hours a week, that's 200 hours of marking a year, and in a secondary school of 100 teachers, that's 20,000 hours of marking. There are ways to do this smarter. Things like whole class written feedback, which we'll come back to, peer feedback, or using digital tools like Rubrics, Carousel, Google Forms, etc., which is what we'll move on to focus on in a different session to those kind of whole class feedback methods. Rubrics are something that I've used for years now, both on paper and online through Google Classroom. And this Wednesday, my class have produced some wonderful EM Spectrum reports that I want to mark using a rubric. Now, I know that most people watching this are coming along to this session will be using Teams, so we're going to focus on a Teams example of using rubrics here. But if you were interested in seeing how to do them on Google, I do have a video that I can send you for that as well. So let's go into our Teams class. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a rubric from scratch when you're building an assignment within Teams. So in your class, go to More, and then Assignments. And then we're going to tap the plus button on the bottom right-hand side to create a new assignment. I'm then going to tap New Assignment. And I want to give this a title, and I'm going to make this slightly different to the other one that I'll show you in a second. So let's imagine I'm getting my class to do an investigation report, which we do quite a lot of in science. And I'll give them some, obviously, instructions here, but I'll say as well, please look at the rubric attached, or please check your work against the rubric attached before you hand in, to make sure you are aiming for gold in all the different criteria. Then what I need to do is I want to add the rubric. So on the right hand side here, near the bottom, we want to tap that add rubric button. And we have the option here if we want to use a rubric that we've basically seen before or we've used before on Teams. This is quite handy. If there's something that you know you're going to use again and again, so I know in science I'll use investigation reports again and again. I also might do some different types of scientific literacy reports as well. Well, then I can use some of those rubrics and I can edit them. So for example, let's pretend for the moment this is not an investigation report, it's a report on something like biomes, and I could actually use my EM Spectrum rubric, which is also a kind of research report, and I could tap that to open it, then tap next, and here you can see the one that I made specifically for EM Spectrums for a different class, but I could edit this. I could then change this to biome rubric, and I could go through the criteria and I could edit any of these points that are different because I'm giving them a slightly different assignment, and then just tap attach. So that's a really, really quick way of being able to reuse rubrics that you've done before. But because I want to make a new rubric, I've not done an investigation one before, I'm going to tap add rubric, and then I'm going to tap again add rubric at the top. So I want to give this a name, my rubric, so that I can find it again later. So investigation report. Description, I'm not going to put one in at the moment. On the right hand side, I can decide if I want to have points or not. So it might be that you just want the rubric there for a more holistic way of marking, or to kind of give pupils feedback without points or without marking. There are benefits to that. It's up to you what you want to do. I'm going to assign points because we usually do use points within my department, and then you can see when I do that there's the 1, 2, 3, 4 that appears beside each of the different sections of the criteria. I then scroll down and my first marking criteria is there. There's only one so far, but we'll add some more after. So in this first criteria, I might speak about the aim. And I might say that in an aim, an excellent aim, aim includes both the independent and dependent variable, for for the experiment. That would be a really, really good one for me. Now, at this point, I might look along here and think, right, there's 4 criteria. There's poor, fair, good, and excellent. I maybe don't need all of those. So actually, I'm just going to copy what I've put there for excellent. And I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to delete that column. And there we go, I've now got 3 instead. I'm just going to paste that one back in there. Then maybe for my second level, so my next one down, I might say the aim, if they get this 2 points, would include one of the independent or dependent variable. And then finally, if they only got 1 point, is the aim doesn't include both independent or dependent variable. Now, it might be that you want to change the titles for these, and that's absolutely fine. So in my school, we actually use gold, silver, bronze. You might use red, amber, green. It's completely up to you. So I'm going to change those just to match. And there we go. I've got my first marking criteria. Then I'm going to go on to the next thing I'd be looking for in my report. So I'm going to then tap plus. And the next thing might be the method section. So I might say that for gold, clear method section, which includes how the independent variable is changed and how the dependent is measured. And then just carry on like that. Now, basically what I can do as well is if I have assigned points, there's this button at the bottom that says evenly redistribute weights. So if I tap that, it's showing me at 50% if it's going to be for the aim and 50% is for the method, because they're the only 2 criteria I've added so far. If I add another criteria and tap that button again, you can see it's now worth 1/3 each. Now, you don't have to evenly distribute the points. I could say that the aim is much more important than the method, so I might assign that 50 points, and I might assign the other 2 only 25. So you can decide which things you think are more important, which ones you think are least important, and you can weight it, which is quite nice. If I want to save some time as well, I can duplicate things as well. So if there's 2 sections that might be quite similar, I can tap that little button above the bin, and that'll duplicate a section so that I don't have to write everything from scratch. So it's really, really easy to do that. And then I just tap attach when I'm finished. And you can see there it's now on the right hand side. So I can click into that just to check everything looks okay. I can edit it, and pupils can do that as well, which is the thing I really like about this. They can check this as they're drafting their work, and that means that they've got a kind of idea of what they're going to need to get a gold, etc. A lot of the time I think we give feedback at the end rather than as we go along, so I think that's really, really nice and a good thing to use. Now I'm going to get rid of this and I'll show you one that I've already made. So if I go into my EM Spectrum report, when I assigned this to my pupils, it had an EM Spectrum rubric attached. Pupils could open that and they could see all the different things that they need to include, and they could self-mark essentially their own work first. Now, one of my pupils has handed theirs in, so let's see what it looks like as a teacher when you go in to mark this using a rubric. So I can see Callum's handed it in. So if I go in here and I open it, I can see his EM Spectrum report on the left-hand side, and here's my rubric here, and if I tap that, it's going to open down the side. Now, the nice thing about this is I can scroll down, look at the report, and tick off the rubric as I go. So for the first rubric, or I'll maybe go to the second, structure of the report. So I can look and see, is the report in a logical order? Looking at their contents page, it looks like it is. So I'm going to assign that gold and 3 points just by tapping on that. And you can see the totals updated at the top. I can change my mind if I want to, and then move on to the next criteria. Report contains headings, so there's clear subheadings. Having a check of that, yes there is. So I can give that a gold as well. And I can basically keep going through that report, and I can select gold, silver or bronze for each of these. When I am finished, I can tap done, and I can go back in there and double check them or change anything, and that's updated the total at the bottom under points as well. When I then return this feedback, I might say, please take a look at the rubric attached for your feedback, or detailed feedback. And that means that when I return this to the pupil, they can open this and they will see what I've given them, bronze, silver or gold, for each of these. Another little tip is the drop down menu. You can see which ones in blue I've already filled in and the ones that I haven't, and I can jump to those as well. This also means that if I return it for revision, pupils can then return it back to me after, and I can then maybe update their rubric if there's things they have updated or they have changed. And this allows redrafting to happen rather than, again, it being a final, that's that piece of work done, here's your score. They can actually get that feedback through you just clicking the rubric, sending it back, and they can have a look at it and update those sections. It's a really, really nice way of them redrafting that information. And I think rubrics will definitely speed up the marking. The most time consuming part of a rubric is creating it in the first place. As soon as it's been created, as you saw earlier, you can reuse that rubric, you can edit it. Once that's done, and you could technically do it as a whole department or faculty, once they're ready to go, the rubrics are super quick and easy to do, and they give much more detailed feedback to pupils as well. So it's a way that I definitely would suggest that giving written feedback using a rubric is a lot more workload friendly, a lot quicker, and it's actually more pupil friendly a lot of the times as well.